Hello, today is Wednesday, October 14th, 2015, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing today? Well, we're on our second interview of the day, and guess who it is? We are fortunate to have, by popular demand, back with us again, Marshall Masters. It's going to be a great interview. First, we're going to take a little glimpse into the missing person files. We have a missing Kentucky girl, Savannah Meadows, age 15, was last seen in Olive Hill, Kentucky on 9/4/2015. She's 5 foot 2 inches tall, weighs 115 pounds, has blue eyes, and her hair was dyed platinum blonde on the top with yellow tips towards the end. Anyone with any information on her location, please call the Carter County Sheriff's Office at 606-474-5616. Our next missing person case is Margot Murdoch, age 8, was reported missing from Horse Bay, Texas, on 8/7/2015. Margot lives with her grandmother, who has full custody. She is believed to have been taken by her mother, Sanja Murdoch, age 28. Sanja is a heroin addict and could die without proper treatment. She's on probation for robbery and was recently released after serving a year in jail. A felony warrant is on file for Sanja. Margot is 4 foot 6 inches tall, 85 pounds, has blonde hair and blue eyes. Sanja is 5 foot 6 inches tall, 150 pounds, has blonde hair and hazel eyes. Anyone with any information on their location, please call Horseshoe Bay Police Department at 830-598-2633 or call your local 911. I can't tell you guys how important this stuff is to me, to get these cases out there for you to look around. If you see this woman and this child, please, for the child's sake, let's get this kid back home where she belongs. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we will have Marshall Masters with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with Marshall Masters. Marshall is a former CNN Science Features news producer, freelance writer, television analyst, and the publisher of YOWUSA.com, YOWUSA.com. Since 1999, he has been researching Earth changes in Nibiru flyby-related topics including sustainable survival communities, catastrophic crop circles, impact events, and future technologies. Like many others, Marshall sees a dark cloud coming. What makes him different is that he also sees a silver lining, a noble and inspiring Star Trek future. Hello, Marshall, and welcome back to info2rail, and thank you so much for being on our show.
It's my pleasure to be here.
You are back by popular demand. Everybody has been asking for me to have you back on the show.
Wow. I love it. What more can I say?
For our new listeners out there who don't know much about what you do, can you tell us about what you do?
Yes, I'm an author and researcher on the topic of Planet X and the coming pole shift. And I maintain a website, YOWUSA.com. You can also reach it at marshallmasters.com. And if you check that site, you'll see all of my videos, articles, podcasts, and so forth on the topic.
All righty. Let me make sure I got everything. A big topic, and I hear a lot more people discussing it these days, is Planet X. I stand outside, and I'm always looking up at the sky because this stuff is so fascinating to me. There's been a planet that's kind of off from where I am, and I stand out front. It's to the east of us. And it started out this little tiny dot in the sky. And throughout probably the last couple months, it's gotten bigger to where it's very noticeable and that it's gotten bigger. Some are telling me it's Venus, and others are telling me that could possibly be Planet X that we're seeing.
Well, what you want to do is you observe something in the sky. Use a sky program. I use Starry Night, but there's also free ones that you can do. And what you have to do is find your location with the program, time and date, whatever direction you're looking at, And then you'll see what's in the field of view, and it will show you if there are any planets that you could be seeing that you could actually be seeing, for example, Venus, or you could be focusing on Mars. You don't know. You always have to double check. That's the important thing. I get a lot of people who send me emails, and it's really thoughtless because they just flip stuff at me. They see an interesting picture and they go, "Hey, Marshall, what do you think about that?" And to me, it's very rude because they don't seem to value my time. It takes time for me to find out what it is, to look at it, pull it up in a sky program, even to determine if the object is interesting. So you got to start doing your own homework. You're seeing something in the sky, it's piquing your curiosity, go. But what I will tell you is that at this point, if you're going to be seeing anything in the sky that's dealing with the Planet X system, it's going to be around sunset and around sunrise.
This one I'm looking at, it's out all night long, but it's even up until like 9 in the morning. You can still see it plain as day. That's what throws me off. It's still totally visible in the daylight.
Have you taken pictures of it?
I have.
Well, you can send them on. I'll take a look at that. But the first thing is to go and get a sky program and punch in your coordinates, the time of viewing, look at the field of view. You know, are you looking to the west? Are you looking to the east? And then you're going to see whether or not you've got a planet there that's already something that's already cataloged. Right.
And I did that. I went on NASA, and they said that right now that Venus would be visible in the sky. But this just seems to be growing bigger and bigger, and it's kind of strange. It almost looks like it's coming towards us.
Well, I mean, the Planet X system is certainly doing that. And it is approaching. It's coming from behind the sun. And people have to understand, because they get a little confused with the orbital dynamics of this system. And it's really simple when you think of a carousel in an amusement park. And there you are on the carousel, and you're riding on the horse, and you're going up and down, up and down, up and down. But at the same time, you're going around and around and around. And this is what's happening with the orbit of the Nemesis system, is that it's going around the sun in about a 380-day orbit, so it's tracking with us, but it's coming from behind the sun, so we're merging with it because we're just a little faster in our orbit. And at the same time, the up and down motion is this long period orbit of 3,600 years. So it's moving on two axes. And what you might think of it is that Planet X is on the other side of the carousel, and it's on a horse going up and down, but you're sitting in one of the little, carriages that they don't go up and down. It's, it's for moms holding on to their kids, because Earth is in a very stable orbit around the sun, going around and around, doesn't go up and down like that. So still the same though, there you are sitting in your little carriage on one side of the carousel, and on the other side of the carousel there's a horse going up and down. But you're both going around at the same time. So that's the way to, in your mind, visualize the orbits of our planet and Nemesis brown dwarf with its attendant planets and moons.
Now, are we anywhere near any kind of event that Planet X is going to cause? Do you think we're near that? Are we coming up to it in our lifetime?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This object is we're already seeing perturbations, okay? And one of there's an ancient Sumerian text that appears in Zechariah Sitchin's books, And it talks about one of the harbinger signs is increased rains and floods. And that's what's happening. So we have rains and floods that are happening, but we also have a lot of other things that are going on right now. The solar luminance is increasing. This is part of the reason why you are seeing so much of the chemtrail spraying that people are talking about.
I wondered about that because they have stepped up the chemtrail spraying like a lot this past year.
God.
Wow.
It's just, it's awful. And on my site, I posted an article about what happened to me recently at Yellowstone. And I was poisoned by the chemtrail spraying, the aerosols. Now, I know we're supposed to call it geoengineering, Dane Wigington and all the other folks that are blowing the whistle on it, because the elites have done a very good job of making a mockery out of the term chemtrail. But to me, that still pretty much explains what we see overhead. And, you know, when you see an entire squadron of jets laying down a checkerboard pattern in the sky that hangs there and hangs there and hangs there, oh, my God.
I don't even know what a blue sky looks like anymore. A natural, God-given blue sky. You look up there and it's nothing. I mean, even when it's blue, it's still got that haze that just hangs there, and it's horrible. And the cancer rates are growing like crazy.
It's really, really, it's awful. And I'll tell you what, this summer, I did a lot of traveling from May through September and going around the northern regions of the United States looking for potential relocation areas. And went through Minnesota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Washington State, Oregon. And when we went through South Dakota, we stayed in the Black Hills, and it was on the way, and I just wanted to see Mount Rushmore. And it was really well worth the trip. It's an incredibly beautiful thing to see and behold with your eyes. Camera pictures just don't do it justice, and never could, even though they're just quite beautiful. And the interesting thing is we were there in South Dakota, and it was just absolutely beautiful. The skies were so blue. We looked up, and I was just amazed at how beautiful and blue, and the clouds were so beautiful. It just took me way back in time, and I was so deeply impressed by it. I had my video camera that I use for my production series, and I just set it upright and pointed it at the sky so I could just shoot blue sky like that.
You certainly don't see that around here.
You don't see it around. I just, I shot it because I just want to be able to say one day we're going to see beautiful blue skies once again. And I actually, now I've got some footage of one. And the interesting thing about being there was that we stayed in a nice hotel, and I was talking with the clerk, and I learned a term that the locals there in the tourist trap use for people who visit. They call us the newlyweds and nearly deads. And that's how, I have to tell you, that pretty well describes the demographic, newlyweds and nearly deads. And we really, we were chuckling about that quite a bit. I was with my fiancée, Jennifer Burns, and we were watching folks when we were at Mount Rushmore, and it was a beautiful day. I saw people moving around, engaged, happy, talking to one another. It was quite charming, quite charming. And then we, a few days later, wound up in Yellowstone. Totally different experience. And Yellowstone, we were watching, and in the term nearly deads, seniors. Well, that's pretty descriptive. And the thing about nearly deads is that they're the canaries in the coal mine. And when we looked up at Yellowstone, the geoengineering jets absolutely were spraying a solid cap of aerosol. And not only were they doing a solid cap, it was continuous spraying, because once there was an opening in the cap, in the aerosol cap, you would see a jet actually fly right into that gap and spray it shut.
I've seen that here. It's scary.
It is really scary. And I was watching that, and and then I was noticing the people around us and remembering a few days earlier when we had been at Mount Rushmore and how people moved around happily and freely. It just seemed so normal. I mean, it really reminded me of 20 years ago. And at Yellowstone, oh, golly gee, talk about a whole different, the nearly deads were moving like tin men that needed their joints to be oiled.
It's almost like we're all become lethargic and kind of,
Yeah, people were lethargic.
Right.
They just seemed to be moving around in a Prozac haze, is about the best way I could describe it. They weren't talking to each other. They had difficulty in movement. Their mobility was nowhere near as fluid as their mobility was when I'd seen these same, the nearly dead generation, if you want, over at Mount Rushmore just a few days earlier. And we were at Mammoth Geyser, and Jennifer was taking video. She wanted to get some video of the geyser. And she came out and she said, I'm starting to feel a little nauseous from the sulfur. And one of the things that we did read in a lot of different publications you'll find up in that area is they tell people, if you start to feel nauseous, well, just get away, go away. And so I said, okay, don't worry about it. I'll go in, I'll take the video. And if I get nauseous, then I'll just jump out as well. I went in and I wasn't really bothered by the sulfur fumes, and so I was there to getting a lot of good video coverage. And then I came out, and a few hours later, all of a sudden, I started feeling very strange. And short-term memory was just kind of getting fizzled. And, you start feeling disconnected is about the best way. Like, you've been giving, somebody slipped you a tab of Prozac or something like that.
And you see people walk around here like that all the time.
You do. And then as it went on, I started developing this immense headache that, it was just awful. I tried everything, I pulled out, it was a leave. After that, I tried aspirin. I tried Tylenol. I mean, nothing could do it. My whole head was hurting, and then it just started working and down. And that night we went to stay with some friends, and the friend I was staying with is a organic chemist, and he's a consultant in the mining industry. And I explained to him what was going on, and he said, well, I think you have had what we call aerosol poisoning, but you're not going to know for sure until the morning. And I said, what am I going to know? And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you. We'll just see. And I had a really rough night. It was just a bad night for me sleep-wise. And the next morning, I was sitting there around the breakfast table, and I am absolutely, drinking coffee with two fists. I can't get it down enough. And I just, every bone in my body, I mean, I'm from the top of my head to my toenails, everything was hurting. Movement was just painful. My head was splitting. It was awful. And he said, yep, you've been chemtrailed.
See, I know a lot of people who are feeling the same effects that you're saying, and they feel them all, like, very often.
very, very often. And so I said, okay, now I need to know what you're talking about. And here's what I learned. And I published this on a site, and people can read the article. But just to give you the upshot of it, for years I've been wondering why it was that I know the elites have moved the jet stream, all right, to the east. That's the reason why we have all the droughts, the fires, the heat waves, and whatnot in the west. The jet stream used to come down the Pacific and then head in through California, actually right through where the Golden Gate Bridge is in San Francisco. That's where the jet stream came in. That's the reason why Samuel Clemens once noted that the coldest winter I ever had was the summer in San Francisco. And because it really was. And I lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, and I can tell you that was the truth. I mean, it was summers in San Francisco were real nippy. And so what they've done is now the jet stream, because they've manipulated it with the aerosols and with the HAARP, has now comes down a little bit from the Arctic, then jumps over British Columbia, and then down along the mountain ranges into the Midwest. Well, I know that British Columbia is affected because I've had people in British Columbia contacting me for the last few years, and they're telling me that they don't get snow in the winter. All right, they get occasional rains, shallow wells are going dry, and salmon runs are off by 75%. But interestingly enough, to correlate to that, I love shows about surviving in Alaska, like Alaska Frontier and Life Below Zero. You watch these shows and you're seeing up there how their lives are being immensely impacted by these changing winters. And instead of getting snow like they used to, they're getting a lot of rain, which gets them mud and makes life really miserable. And it's becoming more difficult for them, especially when they go hunting, because they don't have the snowfall during hunting season that'll bring the game down where it's easier for them to get to the game. They've got to go climb up to the top of mountains to go chase after the game so that they can, get their supplies ready for the winter. And there's also here in this area of California, I know I was back in February of last year, I was in Truckee and north of Truckee in an area that should have between 4 to 6 feet of snow in the winter, and there was nothing on the ground. It was shirt sleeve weather. It was comfortable shirt sleeve weather, and it was just totally stunning. This is a problem. Now, everyone's wondering, well, why are they sacrificing California, Oregon, Washington, these states in the West? Well, what they've done and what I've learned is by moving the jet stream to the east, it now comes down over the top of Yellowstone. And Yellowstone is the largest magma chamber in the country. It's massive. And so magma chambers, as I've come to learn, create what's called an ionic vortex. So by spraying directly over an active magma chamber, like Yellowstone, what happens is that most of the aerosol that they spray is actually falls and then is carried back aloft up into the high atmosphere. Then it falls off again and then descends into the air currents, and it's carried out for 1,000 miles. So what they're using Yellowstone for is a huge aerosol redistribution system to cover the country. So they're probably reaching as far out without those sprays as Chicago and Atlanta.
Wow.
And this is what's happening. And in my particular case, the reason why I was poisoned is that this year they've added something new to the mix, and which is they've added sulfur. They've got, aluminum and all, just a toxic witch's brew of all kinds of stuff. but now they've really, new and improved, right? And what happened in my case was that the part of the aerosols that do fall to the earth, the sulfur in the aerosols that they've now begun to add combines with the sulfur coming up from the geyser. And it creates an incredibly toxic layer. So the reason why I was getting sick and having the headaches and the disorientation and all, because I was being poisoned by all the aluminum and the other things that are in there. And I will tell you, it took, the body aches. And it was like he told me, he said the body aches will go away in 24 hours, and they did. But after that, it took me 2 weeks to recover from that chemtrail poisoning. And it's just, you look at that, and then you hear people that go, chemtrail what?
Yes, I have a lot of people tell me that that's not going on, and that's just, contrails, and I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's like, do you look up? Do you even pay attention? That is not a contrail.
I know your frustration. And let me talk about when they say contrails. And what you do is you say, well, tell me something. When you're at the airport, have you ever noticed that the engines on jets are different than they were 20 or 30 years ago? That now you got that big bulbous housing, and then there you got that little thin tube that comes out the back. You ever seen that? You ever bothered to look out the window of an airliner and seen that? Well, yeah, I've seen that. Well, what you're looking at is a high bypass engine. And high bypass engines can only produce contrails in extreme heat and humidity. That's it. And when you're talking about contrails, you're talking about the days of the Boeing 707s and all those early jets that came out. They had contrails, but not anymore. And contrails dissipate quickly. You don't see a jet traverse the entire distance of a sky leaving the trail. If it's
That's
a
right.
contrail, that contrail is dissipating behind the jet.
Right.
Okay. So have you ever stopped to think about that? And of course, about that point, they'll go, well, you're just being difficult.
They tell me it's just a conspiracy theory, stupid thing. And I'm like, you obviously do not pay attention, And a lot of them will say, well, I don't look up. I don't notice that stuff. How can you not?
People are so engaged with their slavetronics. That's a great term to explain, tablets and smartphones. I mean, and it hit home for me when I was, last year I was traveling during the holidays, and I had catching a connecting flight in Las Vegas. And there I was in the passenger terminal area over by the gates. And this was like a big cluster of gates. And there was a food court. And I'm looking at it, and it was absolutely packed. It was so full that, every chair was taken, and people were actually sitting around on the floors wherever they could sit. It was just that busy, but it was as quiet as a graveyard. All I could hear was, I could hear the air conditioning system. I could hear a janitor who was running a waxer, waxing the floor. And then I could hear people in the food court that were working back there calling the orders. But for the rest of it, I didn't hear anything. And I'm looking around at all of these people, and they're all glued into their tablets, their laptops, and their smartphones. They're walking around looking at this. Nobody was looking up. Nobody was looking at each other. Everyone was mesmerized by their electronics.
I get frustrated about that. And, there's a point in time when I get so frustrated, I'm like, you know what? Can anybody just put their computer, their cell phone, their everything down and pay attention to the people around you? Are we really that into what we're doing on an electronic thing that we can't even pay attention to one another?
Yeah, it's really, really sad. I mean, luckily, I was sitting there looking around, and there was another guy my age, and the two of us didn't have all the gadgets. And we just looked at each other, and we kind of started a conversation, because it was like, I think the two of us felt like we were in a zombie isolated on an island movie or something.
Right. I agree. It's frustrating. Nobody will sit down and watch a movie together anymore. You can't sit and have a normal conversation with anybody anymore, because they're on their computer, on their phone, on their tablet. And it's like, in my house, I get frustrated. Put the damn thing down and talk to each other. Spend time with each other. Cuddle up for a movie. What is the matter with that? If you're that bored with the people that you're around that you can't even take time to spend with them, go find somebody you're not bored with, but put the damn thing down for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it's really kind of a sad thing, but it's also setting us up to fail.
It hurts my heart to be replaced by an electronic, to be honest.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
I love the cuddling up. You get your family together and you cuddle up, or you cuddle up with that special someone, and you put a movie on and you pay attention to what's going on in the movie. You talk to each other. You find out how each other is feeling and what their day is about, and what's going on with you today. Not what's going on your phone or on the computer. Nobody ever even knows how to conversate.
Yeah, and frankly, this has been going on for quite some time. I remember I was driving, looking at some properties with a realtor, and we were driving down the street, and he said, I can tell you just by looking down the street which homes were built before 1950 and the ones that were built after 1950. And I went, really? How? And he said, after 1950, you don't have front porches. Before 1950, you do, because before television, people used to sit out on the porch and visit with neighbors.
That's right.
And once everybody started buying televisions, they didn't want to do that anymore.
My grandparents, my whole growing up, I'm 44, and my grandparents lived 3 houses up from us. And that's where I was when my parents were working. And we had our shows that we watched at lunchtime. I did with my grandparents. But other than that, you were outside and you sat on the porch, and we talked about outside, and we played outside, and we visited with our neighbors. And wow, the changes are horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's just it's not a brave new world, that's for sure. And the thing is that it's setting us up to fail, because once things really start to pop and people are disconnected from their electronics, they're going to be lost.
That's right. They're not going to even know how to approach somebody to speak to them or anything.
That's right. We live in a highly containerized, highly specialized society. And I think one of the things that Robert H. Heinlein said, it was a wonderful, wonderful quote, is specialization is for insects. And I think that's absolutely right.
I think that this electronic age is, put gaps between parents and children. It's put, a lot of strain and gaps between husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. And I think it puts a wedge between people in a big way.
It puts people really into such isolation that they lose self-sufficiency. Once they lose self-sufficiency, they're not going to survive. And this is, this is something that people, they have this sense that I can just go to the store, I can go to the Walmart, or whatever it is, I get whatever I need. I don't have to worry about it. Those things are going to close. I was looking up this quote by Robert H. Heinlein, or Robert A. Heinlein, his favorite author. And I just want to read this for your listeners because I think it's just right on the point. And here's what he said. A human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects.
Boy, is that not true. Wow.
That is really, really pithy. And I mean, it goes to the heart of what I'm doing now with Jennifer. We co-founded a church, which we're starting to roll out, called the Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis. And it's a non-denominational teaching church. The reason why I'm doing that is that for as long as I've been in this, and I've been doing it since 1999, I've always been talking to people in awareness. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of them. And they all are deeply pained because because they've had dreams, visions, and premonitions, and their eyes are open, and they're seeing reality for what it is. They're not living in some artificial matrix that really defines what we have right now for a lifestyle in this country. And they're frustrated, and they're just like you, being mocked, humiliated, isolated, dismissed for just simply trying to say, hey, wake up, see what's happening. Likewise, they've probably been kicked out of more churches and temples than they can remember because they're asking questions that are not on the thou shalt only ask questions on this list. They're going off list and annoying all of the dogma. So they wind up becoming isolated. And all I'm trying to do over the years is just tell them, look, you're not alone. That's it. That's the only thing I've really wanted to do, is just kind of embrace them with that knowledge, because for them, I see their isolation in being alone, and it's really awful. For me, I don't have that isolation because this is what I do 7 days a week. And so I'm continually connecting with people in awareness, which really gives my life a special dimension. And all I'm trying to do is just share that with people. Let them know you're not alone. You're not alone. No, you're not crazy. And I understand how you feel. Many of them feel like they're a healer walking amongst the unhealed and being punished and isolated for it, and then they can't heal themselves. And that's the quandary. I talk to people who are in marriages with spoiler spouses that are threatening them with divorce if they don't stop talking about being in awareness. I'm talking with people who are grandparents and they are just tortured because their children and grandchildren are living in ground zero death areas, and they're trying to wake them up and say, please, please, please move to a safer place. And they're going, Grandma, you're as crazy as a peach orchard boar. I love you, but just shut up. And so they're looking at their progeny walking around with grave markers on them, mentally speaking.
Oh, I think a lot of the older people, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to be awake to it. They don't even want to know what's going on. I mean, the ones in their 70s, you try to talk to them and they're like, I don't want to hear about that. I don't have many years on this earth anymore. I'm just going to, live my retirement and go to my casino and drive my car, and they don't want to be awakened.
Well, I will tell you that the age group that is my constituency is between 45 to 65. I have a few that are in their 70s, 80s, and older. And the ones that are older and in awareness, they're very few, but they are very passionate about their awareness, very passionate. And they understand that you have to have a sense of urgency with this. And so these people really do inspire me. But most folks are what I would call the baby boomer generation, which I'm part of. And this is the generation that has really been experiencing dreams, visions, and premonitions. And once you start having dreams, visions, and premonitions, that's it. You know what you know. I don't care how many dead animal skins someone has on their wall. If they tell you you're hallucinating, you're just not going to pay attention to them. Because, these people they don't see. A good way of putting it is that if you're in awareness because you've had dreams, visions, and premonitions, which typically happens very early in life, it begins in childhood. When you close your eyes, you see a universe of possibilities. And when the people who tell you that you're crazy for it, when they close their eyes, they see the back of their eyelids.
That makes sense.
And that's just the way it is. And so, for these folks, being in awareness almost is like a curse. Because you're all dressed up and know where to go with it. And so what I'm trying to tell people that are in awareness is that you are in awareness because you're a very special person. You're part of a very special big plan. And you've got to see that or you're going to miss the boat. You're going to when the roll is called, you're not even going to know that the roll is being called, and you're just going to miss out. So I got to understand you have a special purpose for your awareness, and that will come in time. And once you accept that, then your life starts to change, and you start seeing things differently, and you start finding that inner peace that is really so important. There's a video on my site. If you go to the video link, and it's under the question mark, "Are you alone in your knowing?" And it's 5 stages of catastrophism. And that is something that if you're in awareness and you are really frustrated, especially because you've been trying to tell people and they have been mocking and ridiculing you, you want to see that. Because then you're going to understand why you're being mocked and ridiculed and what you're going to need to do about that. And what I explain with the 5 stages is that stage 1 is, I don't have time for this crap. That's 99.99% of the world. I don't have time for this crap.
Yep.
Stage 2 is, oh crap. All right. And stage 2 is something. Stage 1 ends when you ask I call it remember the slip and slides when we were kids?
Yes, I have one.
And it had the water, and you just jump on it and go sliding.
Yep, I have one.
And they're a lot of fun until you worry about breaking a hip.
Yeah.
And, but I call it the slip and slide question, which is, well, what exactly am I looking at? Oh boy. Once you do that, then from there's no turning back, and awareness hits you. And awareness, well, there's just no easy way to come into awareness. The process is pretty much like getting slapped upside the head with a dead salmon.
Yes, it is. I remember coming into awareness. I mean, back probably 7-8 years ago, I didn't pay attention to anything. I had my girls and was raising my girls and just living my life. And then once I, met somebody who brought me into awareness, it was like somebody opened a whole new door, and it was like getting slapped in the face harder than you've ever been slapped before.
That's right. You know, it's like, you've been hit in the face with a dead salmon, and all you can do is stand there spitting scales and going, what happened to me?
And you never see life the same again.
Never do. The blinders come off, and that's it. And, that's the reason why people cling to the bliss of ignorance like jealous lovers. All right? They know that once they step out of that matrix bubble of comfort that they're in, all right, that their worldview is going to be forever changed.
And it certainly,
and they fight that.
It certainly is. For anybody out there who hasn't stepped into awareness yet, I warn you, that first step is a big one.
Ooh, isn't it now? Isn't it
now? You just see I used to just see the world as you go to work. I had 2 jobs. I go to work. I pay my rent. I take my kids out when I can, and I come home. I go to sleep. I get up. I take my, it's like now I step back and it's like, holy cow, look at what's really going on here.
Yeah. Well, do me a favor.
What's that?
I'm interested. Do you remember the exact moment in which you came into awareness?
At first, I kind of questioned it when I first was hearing about it. I kind of questioned it, and then I think when I first came into awareness was when I was told to start looking around at things that are not supposed to be there. Not the things the normal things. You have to look beyond the box for things that are just not supposed. They're things that you don't see unless you're looking for them, kind of things. And then I've started seeing these things, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow. So I remember that moment of just being slapped in the face like that.
Take us to that exact moment. What were you doing that day?
I think when it hit me the hardest in the face was I was standing by a back door, and we were looking out the back window. And there was just this little dot off in the horizon, and it looked like a little star off in the sky. And it was pretty, had to be 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And the guy I was with at the time, he says to me, look at that dot out there. What is that? And I said, I don't know. That's kind of crazy. It almost looks like a star, but at the same time, it's different. And within 2 seconds, that thing, it's like somebody threw a lasso at it, pulled it up in front of us to a full-fledged full moon that was so big that we had never seen anything like it. And it was like right outside the window. And it happened it's like it happened because we asked what that was.
And, be careful what you ask for, huh?
Yeah, because at that moment I said, holy cow, things are not what they seem.
And then that was your moment of awareness.
That was my biggest moment to know that this world is not what we perceive it to be. There's so much more out there going on than what we're thinking.
And then comes stage 2. Stage 2 is what I call oh crap.
Oh crap was the chemtrails. At first I'm hearing chemtrails and I'm like, I don't know what these people are talking about, chemtrails. And then I would lay outside for hours and just watch. And I said, holy cow, these lines are crossing over each other and the sky is filling with gray. And what is going on? And then all of a sudden everybody started getting sick. And in New York alone, the illness rate of cancer has just skyrocketed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Dane Wigington points out that in 10 years, 1 of every 2 child is going to become autistic.
Oh, yes. I've seen autism grow at an alarming pace.
It's just at an astronomically alarming rate. And, but I also see other diseases and things that I don't remember as a kid, all the conversation about it. Like today we have irritable bowel syndrome. Well, when I was a kid, you didn't hear about that. It wasn't a problem because irritable bowel syndrome is something that has really come on since we have GMO. And GMO is, here's the thing that people need to understand. All of this is not disconnected. You see, everyone goes, well, there's that over there, and then there's that over there, and then there's that over there, and it's all containerized.
No.
Nice little containers. No, it's all part of a master plan.
Absolutely.
It's all part of a master plan. It is simply this. In the coming tribulation, and folks, those of you listening, if anyone tells you it's not going to happen on your watch, it's because they want you to die, and they want you to die badly. Okay?
I see a lot of the mental health diseases go up. Things that you didn't hear too much about, like autism and bipolar. I have a daughter who was absolutely 100% normal, normal life, right on the beaten path, very intelligent. She was way above her age group. She had straight A's in school, honor roll student. And I saw this child go from that kind of a child at age 16. All of a sudden, she started to fall into someone who, to this day, I don't know. She's, I can't even tell you the difference in my child. And I look at her every day. She's 21 now. And I look at her every day, and I don't even know what to do for her, because this is not the child that I raised for 16 years. And for the last few years, she's become, she tells me this, I can't live in this world. This world is not, this world is horrible. I don't want to live in this world. This world is evil. It's, and she sees so much more of what's going on out there than normal people do. And, we're in the process of figuring out if this is bipolar or what is going on with her, but she's not the person she was. She's very withdrawn. She's very depressed. She's very by herself all the time. She's very, this world is evil, and it tries to it's taken everything away from everybody, and everybody's getting sick, and she sees that the earth is dying, and everything on it's dying, and everybody's dying, and I see this.
Well, she's and actually she's somewhat rare, because I find that under 45, you have a certain amount of people in their 30s who are into awareness, but down in the 20s and younger, it's the exception, not the rule. So your daughter is rather exceptional. She's coming into the awareness. And what she's seeing is she's not seeing hope for the future. You see, here's the three things that I'm trying to help people with now, with what we're doing with this teaching church. And we call it the three precepts, which are self-sufficiency, hope for the future, and knowing that you are not alone. If you have those three things, you've got options. And here's the reason why the options are important and why I'm doing it. Because I understand long range out. Because the elites, when they plan things, we have a literally, we have a microwave meal kind of time focus. But the elites see things in decades and in centuries. They're looking out, and they know that they are slowly losing control over this planet because of overpopulation. And for them, it has nothing to do with humanity. It has everything to do with control, because control is what gives them the ability to live like gods. And that's what they want to preserve. So with this coming pole shift, the flyby, everything that's going to happen, for them, it's a really convenient way to, let's be blunt, cull the herd. Now, if people don't see it coming, they're most likely going to die badly. The movie 2012, all right, the eye candy in the movie is absolutely absurd. People having a conversation during a God knows magnitude what earthquake and things like that. But the subtext is absolutely brilliant and spot on. It does show you exactly how the elites think, how they operate, what they do, how they plan, how they organize. And in the end of that movie, billions of people, 7 billion people around the world, don't know that they're dying until the day they're dying. Until the tsunamis and the volcanic eruptions and everything comes, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And of course, there's the bravado, ha, 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 we're tough, we'll overcome it. But then everything, boom. And people are just stunned because that's it. They're simply unaware of what's killing them on the day that they die. Now, with the elites, what they want to do is ensure the maximum possible dieback of the human species. So that's the reason why we're being poisoned with GMO and aerosols and neurolinguistic programming and a whole host of other things, so that we become less self-sufficient and more dependent. Because all you have to do to kill off somebody that's dependent is just simply remove their source. And then they're going, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to die? You know, these are the people you say, where does milk come from? And they say a truck.
Right.
Okay. I mean, an even better point is what we see is the eradication of family farms. All right. There's a real war on family farms. And this is very, very sad because family farms are our last bastions of self-sufficiency. You give, in a famine situation, you hand a potato to a kid in New York, they're going to say, well, let's fry it. You hand that potato to a kid in a farm area, and they're going to say, if we cut it up into quarters, we can plant it and we can have a whole lot of potatoes.
Right.
Okay. And that's the basic problem with, you know, what we have right now with all of this dependency that we're doing. We're being set up methodically, for sure. We're being set up to fail. And that's the reason why people really need to have to know how to take care of themselves. And that's our mission, because what the elites are going to do is they know what the tribulation cycle is going to be. And I explain all of that in my book, Being in It for the Species. That's the number one reason why you would want to buy and read Being in It for the Species, so that you actually know what is going to come. And you have an idea of the worst case and how it's going to roll out. Because it's not going to be a steady staccato beat, if you will, of catastrophic events. It's going to be just major events that are going to happen interdispersed over periods of relative quiescence and calm. And so if you know what's coming and about when it's going to happen, that gives you a huge advantage. And that's the whole point of being in it for the species.
I tend to believe that we're on the point right now almost where we're, you know, it's going to be really hard to even find food. Our shelves are going to be bare, and in order to buy food, you're going to be so limited on what there is out there. And I think that, you know, they put such a ban on you having your own garden now, or selling anything fresh fruits out front of your house, or fresh vegetables. You know, it's crazy. I used to be able to drive down the street and see 20 fruits and vegetable stands all over the place.
That's right.
Now you see none.
They don't want that. They're setting us up to fail. They're setting us up to starve and to turn on one another. All right. And, you know, if you are in awareness, you know, and what I tell people who are in awareness, I do. You go to my site, you look at the top, and you'll see a link for my relocation webinars. And I'm working with people who are in awareness, and they're saying, that's it. I'm moving. I'm sick of my wife or my husband telling me I'm an idiot. They want a divorce, they can have it. I'm moving.
I see so
and
much.
I see that. I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And, what they understand is that when everyone else is yelling and screaming because they're hungry, the food trucks are not going to arrive.
That's right.
They're just going to starve to death.
That's right.
And the elites are going to they're going to be in their bunkers laughing.
Absolutely.
Because their plan is rolling out. And how do we know when when all of this terrible stuff's going to happen? It's real simple. It'll be reported. It'll make the news. When all of a sudden you look at, there's a helicopter flying over Denver International Airport, and you see Gulfstream jets and Citation jets and all these corporate and private jets all over the place like a bad case of the measles. And when you see that, dying time is near.
I've noticed, in this world, like back years ago, when people were with each other, they took care of their spouses, and they really put the effort and time and stuff into family. And, now you're seeing everybody they don't treat their spouses right. Everybody can just walk away like the other person never meant anything to them. And, I see so much divide and conquer. And
Yes.
it hurts my heart. My parents were married 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now I look around and it's like nobody even stays together for 10 years anymore. 10 years is like, holy cow, you made it to 10? But I see the divide in the families, the kids, turning against their parents, or the parents turning against their kids, the relationships between the two people that are supposed to love each other, just everything is just disappearing. It's falling apart around us.
Yes. And, the reason why is the people who are not in awareness and ridiculing and mocking those who are in awareness are simply being set up to fail. They don't understand that they are walking around like human dodo birds.
Well, I see a lot of people that are together, that are in awareness together, and they both are in awareness. But it's just this, this lack of commitment, this lack of care about family and morals and in relationships. And, for me, I'd rather get out in the backyard with my family and plant a garden and, figure out pure things that we can do in case those trucks don't come in, or, for when that day comes, I'll be able to know how I can feed my kids and my family. That's sticking together, and relationships are a commitment like that. And it almost seems like the elite or someone in this world, and it's biblical. It says in the Bible that parents will turn against their children, and wives against husbands, and mothers against sons. And wow, it's happening like in biblical proportions.
Right. It's conquer and divide.
It's sad.
It's simple, conquer. But see, that's the whole point of it. That's why the people who are in awareness are so precious. Because the ones that don't understand it are going to get mowed down. Other governments are building bunkers for their populations. They're really trying to do things. Russia is amazing in terms of how it's building bunkers for its people. I'm impressed with that. In the United States, what are we buying? We're buying large stores of hollow point ammunition.
Right.
And by the rules of war, if you have a military, you cannot use hollow point ammunition. It's actually outlawed. And the reason why it's outlawed is because it causes such horrific, horrible wounds. That's the reason why hunters use hollow point ammunition, because they hit an animal with it, they're not going to run away all that fast. Right. It's going to tear them up, and that's it. you're shredding the body. We have a government that's like, what, 1.8 billion rounds of ammunition? It's like, why do NOAA weather forecasters need 50,000 rounds of hollow point ammunition each?
Right.
And the reason why is that there will come what I call a time of rage. And this is when all of the people who have been mocking and ridiculing folks like you and me are going to have their comeuppance. They're going to wake up. And then they're going to be mad. And it's going to be the usual, stick your head out the window, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore reaction. And so they're going to march on down to City Hall with all their demands and all their protests, and we're tax-paying citizens and all of that moral indignation. And then what will happen is Homeland Security will roll out the troops, and they'll tell them, okay, disband and go home. Disband and go home. And after the second time, there won't be a third time. If the crowd does not disband and go home, they just simply open fire and mow them down. And this is because the government understands how effective that is. They proved it at Kent State. For those who are old enough to remember the Vietnam War, we had all of the anti-war protests, and they were, quite often and quite vociferous. And then finally what happened was Kent State. And at Kent State, a bunch of National Guardsmen who should have never, ever been there because they were not properly trained troops. National Guard didn't have any money for training back then. So training literally was a matter of these guys would show up for their drill and, they'd get a real good pep speech and then go sleep under a truck, find some place to snuggle up, wait until there was chow call, go have lunch, and then go back to sleep, play cards, stay out of the way so they didn't get volunteered. And then afterwards, after the second day of their weekend drill, the sergeant would give them a wonderful speech about how impressed he was with, everyone's professionalism as a soldier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they took these guys and handed them M14s, and these are 30-06 rifles, semi-automatic and incredibly powerful, hard-hitting rifles, and the rounds really have a long range. Because a lot of the people who were killed at Kent State were killed at long range. And after Kent State, that was it. There were no more protests. It was the end of it. Because all of a sudden, that was it. Now they were killing protesters. Put a whole different spin on things. So what they're going to wait for is a situation where, people come out, there'll be a big rage, and then that's it. They're going to open fire. And they'll probably figure, well, it'll take us a couple of times to do it before people just wake up and smell the coffee. So maybe it'll take 2 or 3 massacres. But eventually, then people will understand there's nothing to be gained by going out and demanding your rights as a citizen, because this is no longer the country that we grew up in. It's going to be a neo-fascist state, whatever it turns out to be.
So in a nutshell, Marshall, what are we looking at for Planet X? What are we looking for time-wise, and what are we looking to happen?
Well, first off, we're going to have the harbinger signs. And in my book, Being in It for the Species, the first one to really let you know things are starting to pop is the winter of ash, which I believe will begin to happen end of this year. And in the winter of ash, what we have is a situation where there are enough volcanoes popping off on the western side of the Ring of Fire that air traffic is curtailed. And that is going to have very profound consequences for us economically and militarily, because it's not going to kill a lot of people. There's not going to be a lot of death from it. But what will happen is that region of the world is not going to be able to operate with aviation. Jets and volcanic ash do not work well together. And so the first thing that'll happen is, if you remember back to 3/11, when you had the big earthquake in Japan, there were a lot of countries around the world that were really impacted from manufacturing because they're doing what's called just-in-time manufacturing. And when the Japanese closed down their plants, they had to shut down their plants because they couldn't get the parts to keep their assembly lines going. Well, we're going to see that, and so that's going to cause immediate distortions in global manufacturing. But also the United States, which, has a power hegemony over in that area, is really going to have its wings clipped, literally, because we project our strategic power principally through aircraft carriers and ground-based bombers, neither of which are going to be able to operate in that environment. However, the Chinese and the Soviets have a different strategic strategy for how they project their power, which is with missile cruisers and submarines, which can operate in that environment. So the tactical advantage is going to go to the Russians and the Chinese, which I'm sure they will quickly capitalize. That's going to change things for us here. One of the first things Americans are going to notice is we're going to start seeing shortages on the store shelves and higher prices for a lot of the things that we buy. And the reason why is we import a lot of foods. We import a lot of food from China and from South America. Well, those imports are then going to redirect to other areas of the globe that are impacted, particularly over in the region where you have the winter of ash, because you're going to have ash covering all of the farmlands. And agriculture is going to be just, brutally slammed. And the ability of these countries to produce food to feed themselves is going to be sharply curtailed. So then what we will start seeing are going to be skimpy shelves and high prices. And that's on whether the food is, grown in the United States or grown elsewhere. It's not going to matter. We're going to see higher prices and shortages because, remember, we're not in a domestic food market here. We're in a global food market where you have agribusiness, and they're going to follow, they're going to ship their produce to wherever they're going to get the best price. It's just as simple as that. And there will be countries that are going to be really desperate for just basic things, and they're going to take what they can get, and they'll be willing to pay through the nose for it. So we're going to suffer that way here. I think that'll be the first signs of it. When that happens, people are going to start waking up, coming into awareness and noticing. I see people starting to come into awareness now. During this trip that I took with Jennifer across the country, we noticed a few things. First off, we saw more American flags on the sides of chemical plants than we did on T-shirts. Think about that. Then the other thing that we encountered along the way, because I made every opportunity to talk to people. You pull in, you get some gas, you get a meal, you stop for a hotel. Well, you're just talking to the guy next to you at the pump. He's a rancher, he's a farmer. You're talking to a clerk in the store, waitress in the restaurant, night clerk at the hotel. And people always had the ability to laugh off awareness with bravado, especially when it came to things like the droughts and the fires and the heats in the West, which are just record-breaking and keep going that way year after year. It's unrelenting. And I didn't hear any of the bravado of, just a bad year, hills and valleys, ups and downs, natural variability, and all of the excuses. People were going, something's really wrong. Something is really wrong. Our planet is sick, and it's not getting better. And we don't know where it's going. We're worried about it, but we don't know what to do about it or what's going to happen next.
I see the sickening of this planet. I see trees are dying left and right, and I see it.
Yeah, and I mean, I was driving down a road in Montana, and trees alongside a highway are not going to, you don't expect them to be as healthy as trees back up in the forests. But I just was kind of curious and driving along, and so what I did was I was going from mile marker to mile marker, and I would just count on my hand the number of healthy trees that I saw. And, that was it. As I went from mile marker to mile marker, I could never count enough trees to use two hands.
Wow.
The rest were either stressed, dying, or dead. And that was just a really, really sad thing for me to witness. I mean, this trip should have been a lifetime of memories, and I came home a sad man after what I saw. And so people are coming into awareness. They're starting to figure it out that it's not happening. But it's, awareness is like politics. They say all politics is local. Same thing with awareness. If a sinkhole is not sucking your house into a ground, then so what?
Right?
Well, sinkholes are a real problem like they have never been before. In fact, it's the one thing the elites did not factor into their plans when they started building their deep underground bases. And something that really is a big concern and a worry for them, because you can have a fabulous deep underground base, but if a sinkhole opens up under it, that's it. Arrivederci Roma. It's compromised. And so this was something when they started their big, heavy plans back in the 60s and 70s, this was something they didn't see coming. And now they're just trying to figure this out. There's a tremendous amount of resources that are being used to follow sinkholes. Every time a new one appears, every form of scientific measure possible is being employed, satellites and otherwise. And they're trying to understand it, not because they're going to share that information with us. It's they understand their deep underground bases are going to be compromised by these things. And it's going to cause them a lot of trouble during the coming flyby.
It's all scary stuff to look forward to, I'll tell you.
It's scary, but on the other hand, I've been talking about a dark cloud coming for many years. I'm focusing on the silver lining, not the dark cloud. There's plenty of Chicken Littles out there. Yeah, and the sky is falling. But for me, I see this as an incredible opportunity for humanity to liberate itself as a species. We're a slave species. And in chaos is opportunity. The last flyby of the Planet X system was Exodus. All right? And a lot of people use the term 3,600 years, but you have to be careful. That's 3,600 lunar years, not Gregorian years. Gregorian years, the Gregorian calendar that we use now, is solar-based. And in Gregorian years, it's 3,548. And when you take that and recalculate, it gives you dead on the Exodus. And what happened during the Exodus? Moses, Prince of Egypt, understood what was coming. He knew Planet X was coming. And at that time, the Egyptians and the Hebrews both called it the destroyer. And they still do. And he knew that when the destroyer came, it would really wreak havoc with the military might and political might of Egypt. In chaos is opportunity. Now, he was able to use that chaos to secure the freedom of an entire people. In this flyby, we literally have the opportunity to secure the freedom of an entire species, because we are a slave species.
That's a good way to look at it.
And that's, that's what that for me, that's my mission in life. And I want to see us, have that, because if we do that, we break the bonds of slavery. We have a Star Trek future, and that's a good future. But if we don't, we're going to have a Hunger Games future. It's just that simple to understand. Go watch Hunger Games. That right there, my friends, is exactly the kind of future the elites are planning for us. But you look at the Hopi prophecy rock that says you're coming to a fork in the road here. If you keep going the way you're going to go, well, it's not going to work out for you. But if you have the presence of mind to take a new path, you're going to have a golden era. Life is going to change, and it's going to change for the better. And so I think people will naturally do that on their own. If they are self-sufficient, have hope for the future, and know they're not alone. So that's really everything we're doing. That's my whole 3 things that I want to do, because the elites are going to come up from underground at the tail end, the last cataclysm of the tribulation, which will be flying through the tail. And towards the end of that, they're going to come up and they're going to announce, we have underground warehouses filled with food, clothing, medicines, construction materials, seeds, whatnot. And we've done all of this for you. But what you got to do for us is submit to slavery. Sign on the dotted line.
Right.
Now, if you don't have any options, a bad deal is better than no deal. But if you have self-sufficiency, hope for the future, and you know you're not alone, you've got options. And if enough people, you don't need, you don't need everybody to do it. Remember, the American Revolution was won with only 30% of the population. The other 70% was either sitting on the sidelines or supporting the British. And 30% made a difference. And if we have enough people to make a difference, that they will stand up to the elites and just say no to the inducements. That's all.
Very true.
We don't want them. And they'll understand when they say no, they're not saying no to the carrot. They're saying no to the stick, because that's how the elites work. First comes the carrot, then comes the stick. But if people are willing to do that, there is a good opportunity, an excellent opportunity for us to become a free species. Period. We don't go charge the guns. That's exactly what the elites want. Attrition warfare is their specialty. Killing people that just simply line up into their gun sights and walk into their killing fields is like, oh, goody, goody, goody. Can't pull the trigger fast enough.
It's definitely something for people to take note of. I think we're going the wrong way with guns, too.
Yeah, the gun confiscations are, that's to disarm us so that we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves. Criminals have no problems getting guns. Never have.
Very true.
And by taking guns away, they in Australia, they did that many years ago. They went out and confiscated all the guns, and the first thing that happened was the murder rate from crime just skyrocketed, because when people no longer can arm themselves and defend their families, it's an open field day for criminals.
Right.
And, this is what they're doing because they just simply do not want people to be able to defend themselves, take care of themselves on their own. It's ugly. And this assault on the Second Amendment is going to really come back and haunt us. But also, the United States has a huge, vast stockpile of weapons. So, yeah, they're going to be going out there and picking them up. And gun confiscations are going to be very commonplace. And what they're planning on doing, that was what they were actually perfecting during Jade Helm. Because during Jade Helm, there was a couple of notable things about that exercise. One was that they declared Texas and Utah hostile states. Now, in other military maneuvers in the past, what they would do is if they were operating in those states, they would give them a different name, the Republic of Kerbango or something. So that's what you call an overlay. Well, they weren't overlaying. They were actually rehearsing how to go in and arrest the leadership of those states, to take out the governor and the legislature, shut them down. Because if there are two states that are going to be resistant to what the elites have in mind, it's going to be Texas, which is a huge gun state, and it's going to be Utah, which is very, very independent. And while the Mormons up there are very good at being cagey in how they deal with Washington, Washington knows bottom line, push comes to shove, they're not going to, Utah's not going to play ball. So they were rehearsing to take those folks out. Now, the other thing is that, you have to have forward bases, FBOs, and so using Walmarts for that works out. I mean, I called it Operation Walmart. With these stores, Walmart's ordering system is integrated with the Defense Department. So literally, you could walk into a Walmart, if you're running a military unit, Homeland Security, sit down at one of their terminals in the back office and order anything you want. Tanks, guns, ammunition, airstrikes, it's all integrated. And that makes it work really well. The other thing that they did during the exercises were nighttime maneuvers. We didn't have, you didn't have all this media coverage of all these daytime maneuvers and people, with plastic wounds and all these things that we normally saw. You didn't see any of that. It was all very quiet, because what they were telling local law enforcement was they were saying, we want you guys to tell us when you get phone calls from people reporting suspicious activity in their neighborhoods. You see, what they were really looking for is detection. They wanted to see how stealthy they could be maneuvering into neighborhoods at night without being noticed, because that is how they're going to do gun confiscations when martial law is declared. Just like they do nighttime maneuvers in Iraq and Afghanistan, you go at night, shake them out of bed, and do whatever you want. And that's how it's going to happen. These are going to be night times. And it's just no different than it used to operate in Russia. In Russia, I did business in Russia for many years. I was in the travel business. And I remember talking about it with several different Russians. And it was pretty much the same story. These people in Moscow lived in large apartment blocks, 5-6 story, with an elevator. And Russian elevators were these old, durable, slow things Uh, the Russians, a little steel is good, a lot more steel is better. And everybody understood the sound of that elevator and when it was stopping at their floor. And so late at night, when they heard that elevator start to operate, you didn't know if it was someone coming home drunk from a party or if it was KGB. But what you listened for was, did it stop at your floor? And if it didn't stop at your floor, you could go back to bed. But if it stopped at your floor, your heart was in your throat until you heard a door open and somebody go in, and that was that. You knew that it wasn't going to be your apartment, that they were going to show up. That's what life is going to be like for us here.
Wow. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah. But again, if you're self-sufficient, you have hope for the future, and you know you're not alone, you've got options. And Creator does not want us to have a Hunger Game world. Creator wants us to step to the plate and so that we can have a Star Trek future. And for those of you who are in awareness, just simply say to Creator, okay, I get the plan. I'm with you. Put me where you need me. And have the faith to love Creator and to trust Creator. And keep your eyes open for the opportunities. They will come.
Absolutely. That is a very powerful message.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy and you have a lot to do, but you took the time to come back with us again. And like I said, everybody was asking for you. They just absolutely love your knowledge, and they love to, you open up a whole new world for everybody. And I think you're opening up awareness all over the world in ways that, just huge ways.
Well, thank you. That's my mission. That's my mission. If you don't love your species, who will?
Absolutely.
Right? People, you got to take one at a time. But if we don't love our species, who will? I'm in it for the species. I know there's a tribulation coming, and I'm going to be frank with you. If I didn't have hope for the future, if I didn't want to let people to know that there is hope for the future, well, I've had a good life. Frankly, if I didn't have hope for the future, I would move to ground zero and just say, let it happen quickly.
Right.
But no, that's not what I'm doing. No, ma'am.
But I think you spread hope to those people out there who have little to no hope. I think that in your way that you express things, you're actually giving people hope where it's needed.
Well, thank you. That's what I'm all about.
Well, I'm glad that you're out there doing this, and I'm thankful that you took the time to come on here with us and chat with us about it.
And I'm thankful that you gave me the opportunity.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you, we'll like to have you back. I'm sure they'll popularly demand you again.
I look forward to it.
All righty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That, guys, was an amazing interview. I absolutely enjoy listening to Marshall talk, and he has such a different outlook on things, and he definitely gives me hope for the future. And I'm just thankful that he took the time to come on here with us and chat with us, because the first time was great, and we had a lot of listeners who contacted me via email and asked to have him back on, and they just think he's great, and he definitely is. So thank you, Marshall Masters. Well, that's all we have time for today. We post our shows on YouTube, and if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, please visit our info2rail webpage. Just Google info2rail and click on our Google Sites page. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, each and every one of you who takes the time to join us here at info2rail. Your support, your come back and listen over and over again, and if it wasn't for the guests and you listeners, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, and I love what I do. I love the opportunity to learn and grow with each new guest and to get that information out there to you guys. Whether it be about Planet X or UFOs or ghosts or any of it, I absolutely love to learn. And I love to experience through someone else's eyes what they've experienced. So this is a dream come true for me. And again, thank you all. We hope to see you here each and every week. We got new guests and new conversations and new subjects. It's a lot of fun. May God bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.